Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us, we cannot contain.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Faith and Family. Happy Monday of Holy Week. We made it. We're here. It's the end of Lent. We have our last couple of days of Lent, and then we're going to enter into the Holy Triduum, and then it will be Easter. Crazy. So all this week we're going to have a lot of fun activities and different stories to celebrate Holy Week. This is the holiest week of the whole year, bigger than Christmas. And even though we're at home and we're still being nice and safe, we're still going to have a lot of fun and have a lot of things to do and learn about. So one thing we're going to do today is we're going to make our own little models of Calvary. And Calvary is the name of the hill where Jesus died. So what we're going to need today to make our models of Calvary is a paper plate and something to color with. So crayons or colored pencils or markers, and then some scissors and some glue, and then some paper, brown if you have it. I didn't have any brown paper, so I just used orange, and that's fine. And the way our models are going to look are just like this. Ta-da! And I can even set it up here on our sacred space. So the way you're going to get started, the first thing you're going to do is get your paper plate, and you are going to color the back side, all right? And I can fold mine down so you can see a little bit how I did mine. So just the way I did it is I decided to put a little path or a road that led up to the top of the hill or the mountain. And this is actually a good opportunity to kind of teach about visual perspective and how things look smaller when they're farther away and bigger when they're up close. So when I drew my path, I made it kind of big or wide down here at the bottom where it was going to be really close to me. And then as it went up the hill, I made it smaller and thinner so it would look farther away. And then I also made a separate little path to the tomb. And you can do that if you'd like as well. And then I just colored the rest in green, but you could do a different color if you want. If you want to make it maybe look like the sky up here or something like that, that's fine. So you're going to color in all of your plate. And when that's all done, probably using some help from a grown-up, especially if you are maybe a first grader or kindergartner or a pre-K friend, we are going to use our scissors and cut just a semicircle, a half circle on our plate. And this can be really hard because you don't want to cut anywhere over here. So you kind of have to poke it first and then cut it. So it might be good to have a grown-up help you. So after that part is cut, you're going to fold it over. So it'll look just like this. So this is your plate. I've cut that semicircle, and then I'm going to fold it over. And then that way, when I lay it flat, it will stand up on its own. And then using your paper, you're going to cut out 3 crosses and glue them to the top of the hill. And then there you will have your little model of Calvary, and you can put it on your sacred space. Okay, so for today's story, we are actually going to read a little bit out of our children's Bible I have right here. And for my friends that watched maybe children's liturgy yesterday, or maybe you watched Mass at home on your TV or on your computer, this picture might look a little bit familiar. And this is when Jesus rode into Jerusalem. And if you look really closely, you can see the people are all waving something in the air. Can you see what it is? It's palms, because it was Palm Sunday yesterday. So we are going to read a little bit about what happened on the first Palm Sunday when Jesus was still alive. All right, and this story, can be found in a big Bible and a grown-up Bible in Matthew chapter 21, Mark chapter 11, Luke chapter 9, or John chapter 12. So if you want to look it up, maybe with mom or dad, in a big Bible or a grown-up Bible, that's where you can find it. The next day, a large crowd was in Jerusalem for Passover. They knew that Jesus was coming for the holiday, and Jesus came riding into Jerusalem on a donkey. The people ran to greet him. In front of Jesus and behind him, people threw palm branches on the road and shouted, Hosanna, or Hooray. God bless the one who comes in the name of the Lord. God bless the King of Israel. So they were really, really excited to see Jesus when he was coming into Jerusalem. But I want to go back a page, and it says, in the very beginning, what I just read, the next day a large crowd was in Jerusalem for Passover. Now, maybe you've heard of Passover, maybe not. So Passover is a special holiday for the Jewish people, and it typically lasted about 7 days, maybe 8 days, depending on where you lived. And it was when they, it commemorated, or it's when they remembered the story of the Exodus. And Exodus is a story about how God delivered his people out of slavery into freedom. And we're actually going to read a little bit about that today too, because it will help us understand the whole bit a little bit more. So we're going all the way back to the Old Testament in the Bible, which all happened way before Jesus was alive. Years and years and years and years and years, long, long time before Jesus was born. All right? So we are going all the way back to a chapter in the Bible called Exodus. All right, and this is about a man named Moses. Moses grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He grew to be a strong young man. But Moses did not like the way his people were treated. He saw Hebrew slaves being beaten and bullied every day. Moses left the palace. He became a shepherd. He got married and had a family. So that man named Moses, he lived with the Pharaoh, who was like the king of Egypt. And the king was not nice. And he had God's people, the Hebrews, as his slaves. And he was beating them and making them work. And they had a very sad life. They were not happy. But God had a plan. One day, Moses was tending his sheep on a mountain. There he saw a strange sight. A bush was on fire, but the fire did not burn the bush. Moses went up to get a better look. A voice came out of the fire. It was God speaking to him. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. God told Moses that he had seen the suffering of the Israelites. He said, "Go to Pharaoh. Tell him I want him to free my people so that you can take them to the land of milk and honey, the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And it says milk and honey were important foods for the Israelites. This phrase means that the land would be a good home for them. They could raise goats and bees, and the soil would be good for growing grapevines and date trees, whose syrup was also called honey in Hebrew. So God wanted to use Moses to help free the people so that he could take them to the promised land. Moses didn't think he would be brave enough to face the king alone. God told him to take his brother Aaron with him to speak for him. "What if Pharaoh does not believe you have sent us?" God said, "I will give you a sign to show Pharaoh. Is that your staff in your hand? Throw it on the ground." Moses threw down his staff. It changed into a snake. When he picked up the snake by the tail, it turned back into a staff. Then Moses went back down the mountain. He and Aaron told the people what God had said. They told everyone to get ready to leave Egypt. Moses would lead them to the land that God had promised. Moses and Aaron went to see the Pharaoh. "Our God has a message for you. You must free our people and let us go out from Egypt." Pharaoh laughed. "I do not know this Hebrew God. Why should I listen to you?" "Our God is great," Aaron said. "Look at what he can do." Aaron threw down his staff and it became a snake. Pharaoh had men who could do magic. They did the same thing. Their staffs became snakes. But Aaron's staff swallowed their staffs. Even so, Pharaoh did not believe in God's power. He would not let the Israelite slaves go. He even treated them worse than before. So the Pharaoh is not listening. He won't let the people go. God told Moses and Aaron to go back to Pharaoh. This time, Aaron told the king, "You did not let the people go. Now God will turn the waters of the river Nile to blood." He put his staff in the river, and the water turned red. There was no water to drink. The fish in the river could not breathe, and they died. Pharaoh just turned away and went back to his palace. He had seen his magicians do this kind of trick before. But God was not done. He told Moses and Aaron to go back again. They said to Pharaoh, "You did not obey God. For this, your country will suffer a great plague. Frogs will cover the land. They will go into your houses, into your beds, into your ovens. They will be all over you. They will be everywhere." And so it happened. There's all the frogs. This time, Pharaoh did not walk away. He said to Moses, "Get rid of the frogs. I will let your people go tomorrow." The next day, the frogs had all gone away. But Pharaoh changed his mind. He would not let the Israelites go. 8 times more, God sent terrible plagues upon the people of Egypt. Each time Pharaoh promised to let the Israelites go free if God would end the plague. Each time God ended the plague, but Pharaoh changed his mind and did not let the people go. Finally, God said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Egypt. After that, Pharaoh will let you go from here." Moses went to see Pharaoh with a new message. "God says this to you: every firstborn son in Egypt will die tonight. There will be great crying and wailing. Only the Hebrew sons will be spared because God will protect the Israelites." Then Moses left the palace. Moses told the Israelites to mark their houses with lamb's blood. Their houses would be passed over when the plague came. So that's how we get the term Passover, because God was going to pass over the homes of the Israelites. That night at midnight, the plague came over the land. All the firstborn sons of Egypt died. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron. He was broken and sad, for his own firstborn son had died. "Go," he said, "leave my people, take your flocks and herds and go." The Israelites left in a hurry. They took pans of bread dough, for they did not have time to add the yeast and bake the bread. On their way, they stopped and asked people to give them clothing and gold and silver. The Egyptians gave the Israelites everything they could. God had put sympathy in their hearts. So they were finally getting to leave Egypt. The Israelites hurried along the road. Some led flocks of sheep or goats or herds of cattle. Moses was taking them out of Egypt to a new place, all their own. They had to move very quickly. God was there to show the Israelites the way. By day, he went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud. By night, he went with them in a pillar of fire to give them light, and so they could travel by both day and night. So that's the story of the Exodus, of how God took the Israelites out of Egypt so they wouldn't be slaves anymore. And that's called Passover. And that's a holiday that Jewish people still celebrate every year. And that's why Jesus was going into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. He was getting ready to celebrate Passover. And the way that people celebrate Passover now is with something called a Seder meal. And it's a special dinner where they eat certain foods and they retell the story of how God took the Israelites out of Egypt and he saved them and took them to the promised land. So, my friends, that is our story for today. Hopefully you learned a little bit about the Exodus and Passover, and we're going to hear those words a lot more during Holy Week, all right? We're going to have a lot more fun stuff going on this week, more stories, more activities. So be sure to come back tomorrow and the next day and the next day at 2 o'clock, all right? We'll see you then.